Now I have the great pleasure of introducing to you our speaker, Dr. Ecoee Rooney. A distinguished leader, Dr. Rooney has more than 20 years of nursing experience and is a recognized forensic nurse and nurse leader expert. She is the Director of Nursing Leadership Development for Ochsner Health and the President of the Louisiana State Nurses Association. Dr. Rooney is sought out for her expertise in leadership, healthy work environments, mitigating compassion fatigue, and vulnerable populations. She has presented workshops on recovering from conflict and trauma for international participants in the International Visitor Leadership Program through the U.S. Department of State and the New Orleans Citizens Diplomacy Council in New Orleans, Louisiana. Most recently, she and her team won one of 3 top spots in the 2020 Social Justice and Health Policy track of the MIT Hacking Racism Hackathon for their solution in addressing the intersection of mental illness and law enforcement. An active member in national and regional professional nursing organizations, Dr. Rooney is a past president of the New Orleans District Nurses Association, past chair of the Wards Committee for the International Association of Forensic Nurses, and has served on task forces and committees of various professional nursing organizations locally and nationally. She currently holds membership in the Academy of Forensic Nursing, American Academy of Forensic Sciences, American Association of Critical Care Nurses, American Holistic Nurses Association, Association of Nurses in Professional Development International, Association of Forensic Nurses, American Nurses Association, American Organization of Nurse Leaders, and Sigma Theta Tau International. She serves on the board of directors for the New Orleans Family Justice Center's Hope Clinic, which provides forensic exams and primary care and behavioral health services to survivors of domestic violence. Dr. Rooney holds an ADN degree from Delgado Charity School of Nursing and a BA in Communications and Women's Studies and an MSN from Loyola University, New Orleans, and a DNP from Southeastern Louisiana University. I would like to take this time to really say thank you to Dr. Rooney for really taking out time of her busy schedule to share her expertise with us. As you can see from her bio, we are really privileged to have her speak with us this morning. Thank you, Dr. Rooney.
Thank you so much, Dr. Byanamie. It is such a pleasure to be here with you all today and to really reflect on the year that we've had together from the perspective of the nurse and the year of the nurse, the International Year of the Nurse, in the midst of this pandemic. And so obviously we have had a year that we're not anticipating. This year has been unprecedented in so many ways. And we have designated it the Year of the Nurse, but the nurses have shown up and shown out in ways that we would have never even imagined. Nurses have really been central to the COVID pandemic response as it relates to care, being there for their patients' families, sometimes really stepping in as family and being there with patients in their most difficult times when no one else could be with them. And so, as a matter of fact, this is the first year that my father ever recognized Nurses Month, Nurses Week, because it made so much media, it gained so much media attention. And so he called me this year to wish me a happy Nurses Day. And it was a delightful surprise, but I think that it really shows us how powerful the message was about how strong the response from nurses was during all of the things that we have experienced throughout this entire year. And so many people see us in healthcare, whether we're nurses or work in other disciplines in healthcare, they see us as angels. They say, oh, you must be an angel to be able to do the work that you do. You must be something superhuman to be able to be there for patients in the way that you are. And I have to say, we're not angels, we're people. And I think it's important for us to not lose sight of that fact, because sometimes when we are placed on pedestals and looked up to, then it's a really lofty place to be and a hard place to, for people to relate to us from. And so to really see us as anything other than human is doing a disservice to the hard work that we do every day and the impact that this work has on us every day because we have feelings and we deal with so much going through everything that we're going through. And so I think that today, in order to make meaning of some of the experiences that we've had, it's important for us to really acknowledge the hard work that we do and the emotional impact and the psychological impact that this work has on us. Dr. Figley, Charles Figley, who is a psychologist, in 1975 began to realize that as a psychologist serving Vietnam veterans who were returning from war, really was recognizing how strong an impact those experiences of serving people were having on the people who were providing the care. So what he was recognizing was that a lot of the psychologists who were providing the care directly to these veterans were themselves taking on a lot of the symptoms that the people they were serving had. And what he came to realize back then was that there's a cost to caring. He said that professionals who listen to clients' stories of fear and pain and suffering may actually themselves feel similar fear, pain, and suffering because they care. And sometimes we feel that we're losing our sense of self to the people we serve. This is what he recognized in 1975 and began the journey of his work, which was identifying the concept of compassion fatigue. It started as something that he termed as secondary trauma, vicarious trauma. But then as he progressed in understanding this concept, it developed into so much more. And so I want to speak a little bit to that, that this compassion fatigue that he described is a very normal response to abnormal events. And I think that this is what we really need to understand is that this is expected. A lot of what we are feeling in healthcare right now is a very normal and expected response to the things over which we have no control. And so looking at the fact that we can expect it, the question is, are we prepared? Are we prepared to address it? How do we address this concept with the people that we serve? And so looking at the context in which this care that we're providing to people takes place, there's first of all the stressors. The context of COVID is the stressors that are the primary traumatic experiences that we have, our own previous traumas, our adverse childhood experiences or ACEs, and current stressors. So when we consider the fact that we kind of imagine that you're born into a barrel as a baby and you have absolutely no stress. You're born unless you had some, pre-birth kind of stressors like drugs or alcohol or even generational trauma, right? So we understand that the context in which we're born also matters, but when you're born empty of stress, we'll say. And so as you live your lived experience, your barrel starts to fill with stressors. And so imagining the traumas that you have in childhood, they start to fill your barrel. And depending on where we are, how full our barrel is at the point that we experience trauma, that's really kind of a determining factor in how well we're able to cope with it. Because, whether I'm here or here or here, really sets the tone for my ability to address the stresses that come into my life. And so when we look at our stressors that are primary, my traumatic stress, my childhood experiences, my lived experiences now, whether they're financial problems or marital problems or whatever those problems are, those are my stressors. Then the secondary component of this are the stressors that are outside of us. So the vicarious trauma that we described before, the traumas that we see, the things that are happening around us, the painful social situations that are unfolding every day, the difficulties that we are having, relating sometimes to people that are so close to us for any number of political reasons or social, economic reasons. There's so many different things that impact the way that we're able to relate to others, and those impact us as stressors. And so the suffering that we see in the world, all of that, those are secondary traumatic stressors or things that we experience vicariously. And then finally, the third component of compassion fatigue is what he describes as brownout or burnout, a term that is used very widely in many different settings, but in this context, really understanding burnout specifically having to do with only those stressors that are at work, the things that are difficult for us in the work setting. And so understanding that those three things together, when we imagine them kind of as a Venn diagram, the primary traumatic stressors, the secondary traumatic stressors, and the burnout and brownout, when those three things move together, in the middle is the compassion fatigue. So that's the thing that we experience day to day. And so, when we look at this and understanding what exists in our cultures of care that perpetuate this compassion fatigue, I think it's important for us to really look at that, because there's so many things that we ourselves do in our own settings that perpetuate this concept, such as scheduling and the way that people may be picking up extra shifts or working longer hours, staffing, when we are addressing a lot of the issues related to how we're able to staff and those things that make us worry and lose sleep at night when we're considering how many people we have to take care of the patients that need the care that we can provide. And then just kind of the cultural things that exist in, and I can only speak to the nursing culture, but the nursing culture has a lot of these kind of, I don't have time for lunch, and I haven't taken a vacation in 4 years, and those types of things where we just don't take care of ourselves, and stepping into cultures where the expectation is that we just keep going and keep going and keep going until we really don't have that much left to give, and then we go some more. And so I think that all of that compounded with poor communication, maybe poor teamwork, and then really lateral violence, those are the things that make the work that we do even that much harder. So when we look at lateral violence as a term referring to the incivility that takes place a lot of times in healthcare settings, where people are not working together, but end up oftentimes working against each other or just working siloed in their own little space. Those are the things that even compound the compassion fatigue in our cultures of care. So how does this present? What does this look like to us? I think it's important for us to recognize that the symptoms of compassion fatigue really present in a number of ways. One is behavioral, psychological, emotional, and so many different manifestations. So for example, some of the things that we can expect to see and that are very normal behaviors and expressions with compassion fatigue include absenteeism, judgment, feeling very judgmental of others, feeling irritability. A lot of times are physical manifestations like rapid heart rate, high blood pressure, increased neck, shoulder, and back pain. It can include GI symptoms. It can include headaches. And a lot of the different types of manifestations that we see in this overall presentation of the compassion fatigue symptomatology has a lot to do with the things that make our environments even harder to work in. And so when we see a lot of that irritability and conflict, even as a matter of fact, one of the symptoms is in the spiritual realm has to do with the feeling that we need to make big changes, like quit our jobs or get a divorce or move, relocate. Those are the feelings that we have when we are under extreme stress. And so it would make sense that we would be feeling that way when we consider what our body's normal, typical response is to stressors, which is we want to get out of there, right? Your body is saying, leave, flee, get away. And so for us to understand the importance of preparing ourselves and understanding that these are all very normal responses, then it helps us really see and at least gives ourselves a little perspective to understand that what we're going through is normal and is something that we can manage. What I will say additionally is that a lot of times these manifestations, when we ask people about the symptoms, you would be surprised how many people really feel exactly the same way as you. I've been doing a lot of work with leaders in my hospital system, and about 70% of them in July, I would say, all said that they felt at some point that there was a need to relocate or get a new job or get a divorce. A big major change was necessary in their lives. So to hear that from other people, it kind of helps normalize it and helps you understand, okay, so I'm not alone. We're all feeling this way. So I think that the important thing then that we need to really understand is that all of these things are things outside of our control. The stressors, the staffing, the pandemic, all of the national crises. These are all outside of our control, right? We have this much control. The only thing that I can control is myself, my responses, my actions, my decisions, my choices. And so when we look at that, then one thing that we can recognize is that what is within our control, what is in our locus of control, is how we take care of ourselves. And that is significantly important when we're facing as many stressors as we are facing. Because if not, we're looking to address our stressors through other ways, such as maladaptive coping and making choices that instead of feeding us and making us feel better and end up depleting us even more. And so let's take a look at the importance of self-care in the context of everything that we have experienced. So what does self-care look like? It looks like saying yes to taking a breath, taking a break, setting an intention, so meaning that when I'm going through my day, I don't have to just keep going in a wrong direction or a difficult direction. I can stop for a moment and really focus on how am I showing up today? How do I want to be today? Setting ourselves with an intention and a mindset that is helpful, such as a mindset of abundance, instead of looking at what we don't have, looking at what we do have, all of the possibilities, all of the things that are possible for us in our day, in our relationships, and then truly being respectful of ourselves and setting boundaries on all of the things that deplete us, like excessive social media, the news, all of those things that can be so difficult for us, to set boundaries around that and say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to endanger myself any further, right? And so really being clear about what you are allowing in to your mind and to your heart. And then as far as saying no, this is the kind of what the part of protecting ourselves also looks like, is saying no to lateral violence. Just absolutely saying no to gossip and excluding people and excluding body language like eye rolling or things that exclude people or other them. And then taking on people's emotions, we're going to say no to that, not kind of jumping into the fray of everybody kind of getting into a big uproar, just kind of stepping back for a moment and really focusing on ourselves. And then also saying no to living like, oops, like whatever, I just said that, or I just did that, doesn't matter. That's just who I am. Well, it doesn't have to be so. And we can definitely say no to living like that and saying yes to living with intention. So then stepping into the concept of colleague care, I think that is the next thing that we really need to look at. Is it not only are we responsible and able to control ourselves and our choices for ourselves, but we definitely are able to control the way that we respond to others and respond to the people in our environments, the people that do the work with us. So imagine our collective responses that we have in our village, in our healthcare village, that we want to create a completing and not competing culture. That's a term that John Maxwell uses in his book, which was published last year. He talks about the leader shifts that we need to make. And one of those shifts, he talks about really focusing on being a completing culture. Instead of being in competition with each other, that we keep going together, that it's a relay. It's a 24-hour day, 7-day a week business, healthcare. And so it's never done. And so we shouldn't be competing with each other and seeing the value in each other instead, and finding ways to support each other. Another thing that we can do for our colleagues is just check in with people and ask them how they're doing, even if they seem like they're doing just fine. I think it's important for us to recognize that sometimes people aren't just fine, and right under the surface, there's a lot going on. And I think that encouraging others, encouraging each other, not just to take care of themselves, but just encouraging them all together. Obviously, saying things that feel helpful, not things that are not true, like everything's going to be okay. We can't assure that, but what we can say is, I'll be here for you. I'm here to listen. You did a great job today of taking care of yourself. You did a great job of standing up for yourself today. Those are the types of things that we can acknowledge and support each other through. Walking with others, walking the path with them, and not letting them be alone if they need some support. And then really valuing others. I think that that's the important thing, is we have to really broaden our understanding of what it is that we value every day. And sometimes in some settings, we just value fast. Getting it through and getting it done. So maybe we need to look a little deeper at what we value, and the gifts and talents and aspirations that all of the different people in our communities and our village bring to that setting. So if we imagine our workplace as a village and that we are all in it together, I think it will really help us to understand in this healthcare village how we can serve each other better. And really, when we consider the concept of lateral violence, which is kind of the opposite of what we were just saying, it is something that we are called to actively drive and change this culture. It is something that we have to really call ourselves on, this important culture change that we must take on to end incivility and bullying and violence in the workplace once and for all. Because these behaviors, they just drive wedges between us. And ultimately, what we understand is that they impact the people that we serve. They impact the patients that we serve. They impact the image of our profession. And they really impact people staying and remaining in our profession. So when we're looking at, if nurse leaders are looking at issues of retention and recruitment, then we have to really look carefully at the things that are in our environment that make us, have drive wedges, such as lateral violence. So the things we can control, like I said, are the perceived stressors that we have. We can, these perceived stressors end up, like we mentioned before, they can drive absenteeism. They can cause turnover. It can cause dissatisfaction in the people who are providing the care, and it really decreases our ability to provide compassionate and patient-centered and connected care. And so it is so important for us to understand that this is within our control, that maybe we're not addressing all of the issues that we need to address if we're not focusing on the people providing the care. And so, like we mentioned before, the perception of stressors is really the only thing that's within our control. And so secondary interventions such as guided meditation and putting the tools in the hands of people affected by stress are really the ways that we can support. So considering the meaning making, which is one of the exercises that we spend a lot of time on in the leadership sessions that I lead, looking at meaning making and understanding what has happened because of the things that we've experienced is probably one of the most important healing and mitigating factors to the ongoing stress that is caused by the things that we have experienced, the traumas that we've experienced. And so when we are able to make meaning of this, which is actually the central piece of what Dr. Figley, Charles Figley, now works on in his practice and understanding of compassion fatigue, is that the way that we move through this then is to process how we've experienced these things and look at how things have come of the experiences we've had. So even though we've experienced something very traumatic, what happened that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been through this experience? What did I learn? Who have I met? And really looking at how do we frame this experience overall in the context of our life and understanding how, because of the experiences that we've had, we are changed, we are transformed, we become richer in some ways because of the experiences that we have, because we have a deeper understanding. And so looking at and finding those gifts is really asking ourselves those questions. What have we learned? What have we learned how to do differently? What would we have never done if this hadn't happened? And who would we have never met, the experiences, if this hadn't happened? So asking ourselves those types of questions really leads us to those concepts of post-traumatic growth, or the things that kind of helping us find where are the pieces that enrich us and that we feel stronger in. And so I'd like to kind of close by saying one of the pieces that has been such a gift to me was this year, my father had a stroke up in Michigan. And immediately I drove up thinking I don't know what I was thinking. Was I thinking I'd be able to see him? Well, of course I wasn't, because of the pandemic. And I had to really rely on the people providing the care, and to be able to experience that for me was such a gift as a nurse, to be able to be in a care environment. When he was finally in his final hours, they let us come in and see him. And it was truly such a gift to be able to witness the type of care and caring that was taking place in the hospitals, outside of my own hospital, because I know my hospital well, to be able to have the gratitude and understanding that all across our country, people are getting care in the most unusual circumstances and in the most unusual times. And still the connection is there, the caring is there. And so my gratitude is deep for every person providing care to people, not just here, but around the world in these unprecedented times. I feel such gratitude to know that I am part of such an important and trusted profession. And so looking at this as the year of the nurse, which it certainly has been the year of the nurse, but not just the nurse. My hats off go to all of those COVID cowboys and hurricane warriors and disaster divas and all of the things that we have been through this year. I have the most heartfelt gratitude and acknowledgement of the hard work that takes place in our profession every single day. So thank you. And if you wish to contact me, this is my contact information. Thank you so much for your time today.